Hi, everybody. Welcome to my favorite shitty movie. I was just before we went live. I was backstage with our guest and my co-host, and it's very exciting. What discussion is about to kick up about this movie, The Big Picture, directed by Christopher Guest and starring Kevin Bacon. It's a very divisive film, as I've learned from our pre-discussion, and I think that's important. I think it's important that films be divisive. I think that the best movies for me in the past have been ones that people don't unify behind. People unify behind various best picture movies. I've this year's crop, I've seen, I think, 70% of at this point, and at no point did I ever watch any of these movies and think, oh my God, this is so good, my life has changed. Which I think is kind of the conceit of the Academy and the Oscars and awards in general. These are films that are supposed to change your perspective, change your life. But at the same time, for the first time in my life, just a few days ago, I actually shot a gun. I shot a gun with live ammo that could kill someone at targets, granted, but I had never done that before. And I could feel the power of the gun, and I understood why people like guns when I was shooting these guns. And ultimately, it changed nothing about my life. I don't nothing has changed. It's sad but true. Guns have no effect on me. Unless like the bullet is like going through a body part, I guess. I haven't experienced that yet, thank God. But I think it's important to note that we all have different experiences with all these things that we love and we hate. And I think tonight's movie, The Big Picture, is a movie that people both love and hate, including the studio that first released it, that buried it in 3 theaters, I think, domestically. And it only really gained traction on video because this was back when VHS mattered. And VHS releases could change the trajectory of a film, including ones that weren't released during the VHS era. All right, I've gone on too long about my own personal nonsense. I need to bring up my co-host. She is currently producing a movie in Ireland, so she is a filmmaker. So we will see what she has to say about this movie about filmmaking. Ladies and gentlemen, Tracy Mercer.
Oh my gosh. Hello, Todd. Good to see
Hello.
you.
Good to see
Um,
you too.
yeah, I'm actually excited to talk about this movie. This is one of those weird. I mean, it's not quite as weird as like the Shaq thing saying I never did a film called Shazam and we could rent it.
What?
Like
Like, what was that?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
understand.
I just
I have a copy of Shazam.
I know.
I
I'm like, dude,
own
it's
it.
out. It's out. So it's not like that, but I had a really positive memory about this movie. And I think what happened was I was in high school. I was working at a movie theater. Worked my way up to being a projectionist. Totally loved it. Free
Oh my
movies.
God. I like that's my dream job.
It's a great job. Of course, also mostly automated now. So another thing that we
No,
were,
yeah, I can't get that job now.
yeah,
Like if I was to run out and try to get it.
it was great. And so I was, back we had Premiere Magazine, we had Siskel and Ebert reviewing things on PBS, we had studios that would, take chances and do all kinds of original stuff. What? At budgets with real stars. What? I mean, it was a really great time, y'all. But I remembered liking this film because I think I knew I was going to want to go to film school. I knew I wanted to produce. And then I saw it when I was in film school up in San Francisco, and we were getting ready to kind of leave, and we were working on an independent movie, and I was like, yeah, this is what it's gonna be like. And then I hadn't seen it since, and then I watched it again last night to prep for the show, And to be fair, it could be because it's really hard to do an independent movie. It always has. It's really, really hard now. But I found myself only laughing when Martin Short was there and being completely not sympathetic or even remotely interested in the Kevin Bacon guy who basically went to AFI, they call it NFI. From the glimpse of the student film that he wins for, he's not talented. And then he's expected to be given things, and then he blows it quickly. And at first glimpse of any success, he dumps the nice girl, is a dick to his friends, doesn't fight for people, wants to hang out with Terry Hatcher. I don't get that. I'll start there. And then, it doesn't work because it turns out it's hard and you have to have talent. And then there's a series of scenes not connected about things that happen that might be funny for some. And then he get to make his movie, which sounds really terrible from the initial pitch all the way through what we see at the end. So I'm rooting for someone who I guess I've just now worked in this business for enough time where I've seen really mediocre white men with zero and succeed. And so the enjoyment factor watching this is not what it was before I thought.
No, that's 100% fair.
So
I totally get
that being said, I love so many people in this. I love the Los Angeles locations. I love that Christopher Guest decided for his directorial debut it was going to be this. And the reason it the cliff notes to why it failed, I would argue, is it's not funny, doesn't work, and it's too insider baseball always, particularly then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the problem was that this film was initially greenlit by David Putnam. Now, David Putnam has taste. He was British. He won the Oscar for Chariots of Fire. Midnight Express. This is a guy of serious credibility who cared about smart dramas, and he loved, as a Brit, tearing apart Hollywood. So he greenlit this movie, and he was quickly fired because he was so erudite, made such good films, they bombed. So they got rid of him because we have to make money at the studios. We can't just keep doing The Mission with Roland Joffe. We can't do, Chariots of Fire every day. So he was
Chariots of Fire. Just like for me personally, is an immensely dull film.
And that's fair. I think that one dates as badly as perhaps this film. But the truth is, the reason that it was buried was the guy who got fired wanted to take a pot shot at the system that fired him. The new regime came in and were like, we feel attacked. And it didn't test well.
So that's it. It was
so the combination.
It was a personal problem between.
Well, it didn't. It's twofold. It's a personal problem. They didn't know how to market it because it's too inside baseball. And we can all quote movies, and we're going to talk about a lot of them tonight, that are about movies about making movies. But this was before the independent film movement. Like we had John Sayles earlier, and then there was kind of a timeout. And then Tarantino comes in, and Rodriguez comes in, and Rose Trichet comes in, and you've got like that 90s, kind of indie film glory moment where Miramax allowed Pulp Fiction to be in multiplexes, right? Back in the day, it might not have been. And so this is right before that moment. So what you have is Kevin Bacon 4 or 5 years out of Footloose and maybe 6 or 7 years out of Friday the 13th. And they're testing him out as leading man potential by casting him in this character that I'm sure appeals to many people that aren't me. And that's the movie. So, but that's why they buried it.
He's not unlike his character in He Said, She Said.
Yes.
Which is also a delightful film.
I like that
film. I totally get what you're saying about it. And I don't think you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I still find this movie.
Okay, we're fine with The Player, but you know what? That's a really good point. I want to bring Chris up to talk about that.
Oh yeah, we should.
Have post-genetic opening. Yes, it did. Totally, Jeff. Yeah, The Player is also one of those things. It's like every 10 years, like Woody Allen would make a movie like Midnight in Paris that makes a ton of money, but mostly they're Match Point, or whatever. So it's like Altman every 10 years there'd be like a national, and there was a Player, and then he followed The Player with Shortcuts. So we had a renaissance, and you had all these stars in it, much like Christopher Guest does in this film. I love
but this movie does not have the cachet that Altman did even at the earliest levels of those starfuckery movies.
100%. So I think it's either ahead of its time or behind its time, but that's my hot take, but we'll see.
And I think that's just true about Christopher Guest. as
Yes.
a visionary, and like
I
sometimes
love
he's
him, by the way. This is the first film. This is the only film he's directed I think I don't love.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, Mighty Wind and For Your Consideration, I think are two of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Best in
But
Show,
but I will say at the same time, Waiting for Guffman was one of the best, and this is Spinal Tap, I think, are two of the best, certainly the best found footage or mockumentary. Yeah, certainly
here's
great.
what's interesting though, right? Because Rob Reiner does Spinal Tap, with Guest there. And I think Guest was like, okay, now I'm ready to do my own movie. And he clearly is. Again, humor is whatever. So I think I understand. I have friends that love this movie and remember it fondly. I did too. It just hit me differently now because I think of Brian.
No, and I totally get that. So let's bring on Crix so we can talk about this.
Crix is right. Let's listen to Crix. She's got a big
ladies and gentlemen, we have this woman on this show all the time because her picks are great and she knows what she's talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, Crixley.
Yeah, Crix.
Hello. So I have to do a drive-by judgment like in Family Guy. Tracy, I disagree.
I know. A popular opinion. I'm sorry.
No, and it should be. There should be like if we all like the same thing, it'd be fucking boring, right? I think. Yeah, I think for me, because I had just graduated from high school when this movie came out in '89, right? And I really knew nothing about, I didn't have a whole lot of experience acting other than summer fine arts camps and stuff like that. So I grew up in Alaska, and then I went to school in Hawaii, and, we don't have productions going on all around us. And I was always curious, when this movie came out, I mean, because I love Kevin Bacon, it was funny to me because it kind of, what Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and I can't remember the other guy's name, I'm so sorry, that wrote the movie, they kind of put in these, I don't know if they meant to do it, but there's like, the little interstitials where he's like in Lederhosen, and he's like, yeah, that reminded me of Dream On, which is a TV show on HBO years and years and years ago. And
Brian Benben, who was married to Madeline Stowe. I wish I was Brian Benben.
Courtney Cox's first role, I think, after she did the Dancing in the Dark video with Bruce.
That's important because Dream On was created by Bright Coffin Crane, who gave us Friends, because Dream On,
right.
And so it was the beginning of that.
Right. So in Dream On, like, it's kind of funny because then when Remote Control came out, I had to laugh. Because it was like Kenny wasn't like the other kids. He grew up watching TV, and it's the same thing with Dream On. Is like in the opening title sequence, you can see him as a baby watching TV, and then the mom like plumping him down in front of the TV at different ages. And so, and I kind of do this too. Is he'll be in the middle of a conversation and have this fantasy, and it'll be a clip from an old TV show or a movie. And that's kind of what I thought the imagination was kind of going was with the Dream On thing. But the funniest part about this is everybody fucking loves The Player. The Player came out 3 years after.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like they kind of sucked some stuff off the big picture to put in there.
To a degree. Here's my thing.
I mean, because they were eating at the Ivy, right? So it's like,
yeah.
But that would have been the spot back then. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
If you'll allow me to suggest this. All right, so it's a good comparison, The Player to the big picture. The Player is ultimately about a murder.
Yeah.
A murder mystery and crime. The big picture is just about a guy trying to make it in the movies. And
yeah, but in The Player too. In The Player too, he goes, this dude does all this shit just so he can get a movie made.
Well, yeah, you're right. That's fair. But I'm saying that the movie itself, the narrative, is ultimately a murder mystery.
Right. Okay.
Is about.
I agree with because I love The Player when I saw it then. I love it now. I can quote it on the Criterion. Here for it. But there is a narrative to the player. So there's everything you like about Altman, overlapping dialogue, and who's who. Look, it's Cher. Okay, cool. Everyone's in it. But it's like there's a plot, which is about there's murder. The idea of the studio executive who doesn't care about murdering. Of course, they don't care about writers. We just had a strike about that. But the idea that like you've got these guys and the player who are like, I'm the masters of the universe, and they don't understand. Like they don't know the name. They don't know Citizen Kane. Right, there's this complete vacuum. I think there's a level of insiderness that is there, but there's also an ability for a mass audience to enjoy the player. Again, it's one of the few Altman movies that actually made money. And I think this one doesn't make money because there isn't really, I think, a plot. And like looking at it through my older eyes now, there are scenes. So
just like
there's no plot though. It's like, can I get a movie? I got a movie.
I agree with you, Tracy. Let me say this really fast, though, Tracy. I totally agree with you. I think that the problem is less the narrative and what the artists were doing, and more that it was buried by the studio. This movie was not given a chance on its initial release.
Press well because it did not play well at the time. So you had this is political, by the way. I've had movies I've worked on for years that got destroyed, like Ian Flex, I swear to God, like he originally invigorated that right after 9/11. The lie is beautiful, the lie is subversive, what happens in a society, where scientists rule and what are they really doing? And there was a political subplot to Ian Flex. It's actually quite interesting. But what happened was we were greenlit by Sherry Lansing. We were put into development by Donald DeLine. Gail Berman wasn't there long enough to look at dailies. And then Brad Gray came in and went, we're going to take out Sherry's trash and we're going to release it in February, even though your star, the great Charlize Theron, just won an Oscar for Monster, because I don't want Sherry's movie to make money, and because that's the old regime. And so he burned it. He made us change voiceover and opening, and he ruined the movie. So what happens to the Kevin Bacon character is very real in that one soulless studio executive is like, hey, I saw your short film at AFI, and I think you're brilliant, and pitch me something. And he pitches a half-baked idea that would get him thrown out of any office. And he goes, let's do that, except let's change everything. It's like that happens. And then when that studio head is fired and the new one comes in, you are not welcome anymore. You're persona non grata on the studio. That's correct. That happens a lot. But that's also ironically why this movie is meta, because David Putnam is like, the system sucks and I'm going to talk about it. And then he's fired just the way Walsh's character is fired. New guy comes in and goes, no one understands this outside of the system. And it's not funny. It didn't chart. Had it tested better, they wouldn't have dumped it because they had money against it, right? So you had a lot of problems with they didn't know how to market it because it was too inside baseball. We like film. We all work in it.
I hate that term so much.
I know, just saying, but that's what happens. I've tried to pitch good movies about movies and everyone passes because of these kinds of things. And
yeah, but the difference between the player and the big picture is, yes, the player has a through line. The dude knows what's going on. I like that there is not a to B point because, as you know, getting to A to B is fucking impossible in Hollywood. I've had people say, I want you to sing on my album. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And did I ever hear from these fucking people again? No. Actually, I had a friend who was a makeup artist, and she told me, she's like, don't trust this motherfucker because they're going to give you a whole bunch of bullshit. It's like, Sussman, I'm going to come with you with 3 different people. It's so for the big picture, the fact that it's all over the place, I think I enjoy that because we've all been through it. It's like, hey, I got something greenlit. Oh, wait. Oh, fuck. Okay, you got greenlit again. Oh, wait. Oh, fuck. Prime example, Gears of War movie. The Gears of War movie has been in development hell since like 2010 because people keep picking it up and then everybody's like, no.
Yeah.
And with
well, to your point though, but Chris, you're 100% right, because I think one of the things that felt real in this movie still was the whole concept of Michael McKean is like the DP, that is Kevin Bacon's friend, and he doesn't fight for him when he could. Instead, he gets.
And that's where I learned the term "I fought for you" was the first time I heard that. And then when someone said it to me when I was at university, He was like, I fought for you. And immediately I was like, you fucking did not. You're going to do whatever the fuck you want because the university is paying for the play that you're directing to go to ACTF, which is a college theater festival.
That's a great lesson for everybody listening. For everybody listening right now who's thinking about going into entertainment.
Nothing is guaranteed. I'm just going to say that.
And when they say they fought for you,
they didn't.
They are lying to you. That's the only time you hear "I fought for you" is when someone is lying to you. That's the only.
And Tracy, I think that's why The Big Picture deserves a place in like film school and stuff, because a lot of the shit that goes on in this film, like filmmakers are like, some filmmakers are still like, did you ever hear this term "I fought for you"? And they're like, oh no. And I was like, it's a bullshit term, meaning that they just went okay and kissed the fucking ring.
I think, and again, this is like, I don't want to split hairs because I think this movie is what it is. It's of an era. I agree. It's the terrible people part of this is evergreen. If anything, it's gotten worse because technology allows them to be more awful quicker, faster. But I do feel like why I think it is appropriate for this particular program to be talking about it is it is flawed. But I think if you're of a certain age, if you've worked in the industry, you want to work
right.
I think you can embrace it. I would argue, and we'll talk about this later because I want to focus on the movie now, but like I think like Swimming with Sharks, which came out, similarly, is a little more prescient. And actually,
Swimming with Sharks, yes. Well, Kevin Spacey and what's his face?
Yes.
Before we we have to have Crix take us through.
You have to tell us what the hell.
Like, tell us what this movie's about. But before we do, Tracy, I just want to know this about you. How are you on Kevin Bacon? As a movie.
I love Kevin Bacon.
You're a lover of Kevin Bacon.
I like Kevin Bacon because here's the thing about Kevin Bacon. I think he falls into this odd category for some, like almost Dennis Quaid, where I think he looks like a leading man, but he's actually a character actor. Mm-hmm. And you put him in something like Stir of Echoes, by the way, better than Sixth Sense.
Beautiful film.
He's amazing. David Koepp's amazing. Stir of Echoes is what Sixth Sense was.
Stir of Echoes is a wildly underrated movie.
That's freaking great. And I think Bacon, but what I like about Bacon is that he will be like, you know what? I'm smart enough to be the guy. I'm going to take like maybe a week's worth of work because I want to be in A Few Good Men. I'm the guy who's not afraid to do the following and do that. Oh, by the way, I want to do Full Frontal. Let's bring on Denise Richards and Nev Campbell, and it's like
Wild Things. Wild Things.
So he
have we not done that on
the Bacon.
I will say one thing. I want to give a shout out to him. Not that he needs it because he's doing quite well in his career.
The Bacon Brothers, yeah.
Bacon Brothers, great. But once upon a time, when I was working for Ms. Aniston as her first personal assistant, and we were getting ready, Fox was going to, let her, top line her first, feature film, right? Picture Perfect. Back in the day, the great Glenn.
Oh, Jay Moore.
Jay Moore, right? Directing. There were problems because it was 1996 and a lot of dude actors of names didn't want to play second fiddle to them. They called her the girl from Friends because this was her first attempt. Can she carry a movie or not? And a lot of men with names were not charitable and would not co-star opposite cute as a button Jennifer, who was ready to be a star.
That's why I love Jay Moore. Jay Moore's like, fuck it.
Yeah. No, Jay Moore, I'll tell you how he got the role. No one would take that role either, but somebody saw they saw the dailies for the Jerry Maguire scene where he takes Tom Cruise out and he fires him in the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Scene was going around the studio and they said, well, this guy could be in the Aniston movie because they couldn't get a name actor there. And then they still needed the bad boy. Kevin Bacon came in, no shame. He said, I will do this. I think Jen is cool. And he shows up for like a week's worth of filming, and that's how Picture Perfect got made because he showed up for her. So not only do I like him as an actor, but personally, he was cool when other dudes with names were not. And so I love that. And I love that he's the same woman decades. I love Kira. I think.
Yeah, are we like talking up Jay Moore right now?
No, Jay Moore.
No, Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon. But Kevin Bacon is the one that got Picture Perfect because, it was like you have a TV star. No one cared who Jay Moore was yet. Kevin brought it all together. And I think he deserves credit for that. And he's good in everything. That man's never given a bad performance. ever.
No, at least he's never given an undedicated performance.
And he always tries, and he does. He's always.
I don't know how many times you've seen Whitewater Summer, but there's
all that.
Animal House. I watch Animal House. All is well.
It's so good. All right, so Chris, break it
Yes.
down. Take us back. How this film opens on Eddie Albert.
Okay, Eddie Albert. This is Eddie Albert's last film, actually. So the one thing I did want to say about the big picture as well is that when Comedy Central used to do those little interstitial snippets when they would show clips from things, it was always the Neil Sussman one, and they did show one of from The Player too. It's where Tim Robbins is like comes up to Burt Reynolds and is like, "How you doing?" And Burt Reynolds is like, "Who the fuck is that guy?" You know, and that whole thing. And so so we're looking, okay, so the big picture, you just saw the picture of Eddie Albert. It was his last film. And so basically, we open on a film school, like the graduation night film festival, whatever the fuck. And of course, Jennifer Jason Leigh plays Lydia, and she's very good friends. She's like the only person at film school that he actually likes. And then there's Nick. And so basically, Nick wins best film at his graduation night. And
you guys, this is a shot from his short film.
yeah, it was called The Date, the first date, our first date. And
yeah, just because there's a bulldog, it's pretentious, it's a fisheye thing, it's in black and white.
I would say I would say here that Christopher Guest is doing a great sketch comedy personification of student films. He nails that element of this movie very well.
But my favorite was Jennifer Jason Leigh's one. Hers will always be my favorite.
Jennifer Jason Leigh's is the best. But the problem, again, because I think Christopher Guest wants to skewer student films, and there's a lot to skewer. I don't show mine. Good luck finding Amblin online, just saying, y'all. But when you show this, the setup of a studio head looking at black and white, that kind of camera angle, that level of pretension, that kind of like whatever, a studio person would never come up to that guy. And for the whole setup, you just have to go with whatever. They come up to people like Spielberg, who does Duel, and they're like, dude, you could do Jaws. They don't do esoteric, I saw Ingmar Bergman movies.
Yeah, and also realistically, Tracy, there's no indie short film festival that any executive has ever been at. No. It doesn't happen. They don't go out to.
They send their assistants to take notes and do coverage on.
They don't do that.
Yeah. Right, but this is also, again, you have to remember this was when we were young. So when we were 18, and this is just, and the thing with the big picture, I always tell people, I'm like, take it with a little grain of salt, okay? Because so in this movie, what happens is Nick Chapman wins, and he's immediately approached by J.T. Walsh's character, who's the head of a studio. And oh my gosh, she's like, okay, bye. And he's like, I want to see, like, let's set up a meeting tomorrow. And then it just goes into this whirlwind that really can affect anybody. Even the hardest person on earth would be like, oh my God, this is really going to happen. Because then all of a sudden, and you see the typical thing where it's like, this is so-and-so from so-and-so agency. Doop, this is so-and-so from so-and-so agency. Doop, this is so-and-so. This is so-and-so from the studios. This is so-and-so. But yes, and going back to here, one of the student films, and this is also why I love the big picture, Tracy, is because there's always that one kid. And that kid is actually played by Elliot Gould and Barbara Streisand's son, Jason Gould. And so when you look at his student film, it's full of celebrities. There's Stephen Collins, Roddy McDowall, like there's all these recognizable people. And then it comes out that and Elliot Gould's in it, of course, too. And then it turns out his dad is a fucking agent, and all the people that were in the kid's movie are his little thing of talent.
Yeah.
And you always have that one Nepo baby. And then the other one with pervert Dan Schneider playing the lead role.
Really, before you go on, I just want to shout out this particular Nepo baby. Can you put him up again, Tracy?
Jason
this
Gould.
particular Nepo baby was willing to make fun of his Nepo baby status in a
Yeah.
movie that no one would ever see. And I just want to call out Bryce Dallas Howard and say, look at this man and what he did back in the day and consider doing the same thing. Just consider it. Just consider it.
This is a
Sorry.
woman who wore high heels in Jurassic Park number whatever, right? Don't
The
expect
Jurassic World
World.
1.
Oh, I'm sorry, World.
Yeah.
Jurassic
You know, and
World.
there's
I'm just like, I saw her like in an interview talking about like her grandmother or aunt or somebody told her like any actor worth their salt doesn't get through 68 auditions before they get a role. And she was like keeping count of her auditions. Oh, God bless. And she got to like 48 and she got the role and she's like, oh, I did it. I beat my grandmother. For fuck's sake, you're Ron Howard's daughter.
yeah.
That's all there is to this.
There's a great writer in the Hollywood Golden Age, Moss Hart. Great name, Moss Hart. And Moss said, success in Hollywood is relative. The closer the relative, the greater the success. You know what I'm saying? So this is since the beginning of time.
Thank you.
Right,
Yeah,
and there's
it's
a-
not new. It's not new.
I was gonna say there's also these little things that go on. I don't know if it was meant. I don't think they realized it till after the fact. But in the film thing where Tristan, whatever the fuck, he goes, and to our so and so who was regrettably killed while filming.
Oh my God! Like, by the way, right after
Jennifer Jason Leigh's father is Vic Morrow, who got killed on the Twilight Zone. So it was when every time I hear that, I'm just like, did they tell her, or maybe just like, you know, like, I mean, because that's not a joke you can really laugh at when your own fucking dad and everybody saw it.
And
Everybody saw it.
the movie was still sort of fresh, a couple years before. And so, like, by the way, anyone playing along at home, if you really want to hate John Landis, and you should, because when you kill 3 people, that should
Him and his kid can both fucking suck my dick.
well, that's a way to phrase it for sure.
Okay.
But I was going to say there's a great book called Outrageous Conduct, and it breaks down exactly why Vic Morrow is no longer with us, along with those 2 beautiful, Vietnamese babies that were destroyed and decapitated because of John Landis's hubris. And it breaks it down. And to this day, every year on the anniversary of John Landis getting away from killing 3 people, he takes all 12 jurors out to a very expensive dinner to his day.
Oh, wow.
He's
That's
not-
gross. That's the
So,
grossest
in
thing
this
I've heard.
context, you don't have to forget that. So,
And I would just like to say, if you don't think that John Landis is what Tracy is suggesting he is, I highly recommend.
kill 3 people.
Yeah, I highly recommend getting the collector's edition of 2001 Maniacs, in which John Landis has multiple.
What, Tim Sullivan's movie?
Outtakes.
Or
What?
are we talking about 2001 Maniacs? Are we talking about Tim Sullivan's remake or the original?
No, I'm talking about Tim Sullivan's remake.
Okay.
I think that Landis did multiple, like, I don't know what you call them, like bonuses on the DVD, the special edition.
Oh,
DVD.
multiple features.
But he does a violent homophobic rant to camera. I can't express what I've seen to you. You have to watch it.
I've never dealt with him, but I've dealt with his son, and I was the first one to come out and say, that kid is a fucking asshole. And a bunch of my friends who loved him went, well, fuck you then. And then 6 months later, all that shit came out, and I was like, I told you he's a fucking asshole.
Yeah,
Max
they're-
Anderson canceled himself out of Oblivion, which is good. I mean, I don't want to say
Yeah.
like father, like son, because that's too obvious, but hashtag maybe.
yeah.
But back to the film about the guy with no talent who gets the opportunity, and I'm rooting for him to be a dick.
That talent. But he's, so in the start, he's got his girlfriend from back home or wherever he met her. She's an architect, and she's very pretty. She's very blonde as Emily Longstreth, which I don't know if I've ever seen her in another movie besides this one.
No, but you know what? She's kind of great. It's perfectly cast.
I love her.
Well, no, that's why. It was because I've never seen her before, and I've never seen her after. And it was as to Terry Hatcher, it was like typical LA, big fucking hair, showing the midriff. And what is funny is when he's in the meeting, when Nick is in the meeting with Hobel for the first time, they said, Mrs. Fleckman is here, or Mr. Fleckman is here to see you. And that was supposed to be a reference to Fleckman from Spinal Tap. And then, of course, you've got Fran Drescher, again, another typical LA, the midriff miniskirt thing. Yeah, and she's Polo.
And she's currently the president
of SAG,
our union.
Mm-hmm. But God, look how good looking he was back then. Damn.
He's very nice.
Even when he did that shot, I don't know why they did it, but they did the shot where he's like leaning back like this. And I'm like, I really don't want to see up his nose. But yeah, and going back to Kevin Bacon, Tracy, where you're like, he's in that weird dichotomy, because sometimes I see him and he looks cute like this, or like in She's Having a Baby.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll see him in another thing and I'm like, I don't find him attractive whatsoever. It's the nose. It's just the nose changes every now and then. Not like he got plastic surgery, because he did not, but it's just a thing.
So,
and also,
how you shoot Kevin, this is the thing that also, and again, Christopher Guest's first movie. And I think we tend to not I love movie stars. They're a dying breed, but I've been fortunate enough to work for two. And it's like, I love taking care of stars. And I just feel like the thing with Kevin Bacon is you can put the camera higher and it alleviates the situation. It's like the great Claudette Colbert, right? It happened one night.
I burped.
She did not like one side of her face. So if you watch a Claudette Colbert film, it's going to be like this for the whole movie.
Oh, it's the same with Mariah Carey. She only allowed herself to be shot from one side.
For the talent part, that's a good analogy for me.
Well, it's like Janine Garofalo said, once she lost weight, she was like, the thinner I became, I realized the more talented I'd become. And it was, and it was a joke, but it was a good joke, because she had just been cast in The Matchmaker. So she was The Truth About Cats and Dogs. So she did Truth About Cats and Dogs, and then she started slimming down more. And then she got her first lead, which was The Matchmaker, which nobody has seen. And it's a fucking shame, because it's a beautiful Irish film.
I'll tell you this right now as an actor who's worked as an actor. I got more work when I had mono, the Epstein-Barr virus, and I was like sickly looking than I ever have before or since.
But also to Crix's point, though, because this is another thing that's really gross about this town, which the big picture does talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is like even the phraseology of, and I've said it too, right? It's like, oh, when Janine Garofalo slimmed down, I'm like, yeah, when she went from a 6 to a 0. Like, by the way, 6 is tiny, tiny. But like the idea that in Reality Bites she was the heavy set best friend, I'm like,
yeah.
Stop it. She's adorable, cute as a button, didn't need to lose weight, and fuck this town. But anyway, that's another conversation.
I hate that movie. Reality Bites.
Oh, Reality Bites.
Reality Bites is as unfortunate as the novel Generation X is to our generation.
Well, the fatal flaw on Reality Bites, let's
horrible.
be honest. Reality Bites was about, we're going to do the Gen X movie. The problem with doing a Gen X movie in 1994, when the independent spirit movement was on high, was that you had a major studio like Universal releasing Reality Bites saying we're indie. It's like, no, you know who's indie? Robert Rodriguez. You know who's indie? Cheryl Dunye. You know who's indie? You. And so there was an inherent thing in that. And it's so there, I have a fondness for Reality Bites because I was about to graduate from college. My bestie at the time is the great Jimmy Radassa, who's been on the show, brought us down, if you will. He and I went to go see Reality Bites 2 weeks before we walked down and got our diploma. And we were watching this movie going, okay, this is bullshit. I love that Winona is like, I'm so detached from my generation, I didn't get the jokes. And Helen Childress is crap. I'm like, good interview. But the thing though, it's like, it is the best and the worst of our generation. So it is that touchstone, whether we like it or not.
I don't know. I mean, I would go with
it as part of my lexicon.
Reality Bites. I'm going to go for here. St. Elmo's Fire, and Reality Bites both underperform at the box office, and when it's turned into a TV show called Friends, it works.
Oh, okay, that's a good point.
It's turned into a TV show called Living Single. They swiped and turned into Friends.
A better written show with people of color. Do you see how it's different?
Yeah.
But still, Living Single came out first.
Before Friends, absolutely.
Yes. And it's the same formula. It's just different colors. Yeah. And would an Asian show work like that? No, because I just had this argument the other day, and we'll get back to the movie, but this Fool on Hulu, which was Chris Estrada's show, and Michael Imperioli was in it. But it's about Boyle Heights and, being Mexican in LA. But being a normal Mexican in LA, I've actually told people this is Curb Your Enthusiasm, but for Mexicans. And the show makes me laugh, dude. It is. If you think about it and go back again, he is Larry David, as I say. But
I'd rather watch Curb Your Enthusiasm for Mexicans.
I can't watch Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, Frankie Quinones, who's also on What We Do in the Shadows. He came out and he's, and it was just like da da da. And I came out with this argument. I said, we don't get to have normal shows like this, because when they look to the brown and yellow for content, it's usually we end up being hoes, pimps, a hoe, and maybe a pimp. A gangster, a drug dealer, an assassin, a fucking yakuza, and it's bullshit. I mean, we're still looking at, with Asians especially, it's like, oh, we're interchangeable. We all look the same, and if Ken Jeong's okay with playing Chinese people, I love him for it. And we all do. It's like sooner or later we just all say fuck it. And but I'm so ethnically ambiguous, I can't even get a role as an East Asian. I get cast as South Asian, Mexican,
really,
anything. Oh yeah. I mean, even when I go to I like to shop at the 98-cent store sometimes, and I put all my stuff down, and it was she goes, I go, how much is this? And she's like, and she said this price in Spanish. I go, oh, I don't speak Spanish. She's like, are you sure? She's like, you look Spanish. But and so yes, the big picture is incredibly white. I would say if they redid it again, it would be definitely different. But I think too, it speaks to what hillbillies like me are like. We just assume that once you get it, you're out the door and good to go. And so what the big picture does is yeah, I got it. No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. And what I love about Kevin Bacon too in this, and I love him in general, Tracy, is because Bernie Madoff wiped him and his wife's just took all their fucking money.
Yeah.
And Kevin never was like, oh, feel bad for me, or him and Kira said nothing. They just went back to work. They were back to work.
The man, you can count on him. I'm not saying everything he's ever done has been whatever, but he always shows up. And I feel look, I love the great R.I.P. Roy Scheider. That man never gave a bad performance, and whether he was doing sleazy shit like 52 Pickup, which I secretly love.
Oh my god, I just watched it.
Oh my god, I love it. And Margaret for the win, always. But
it's so good. It's such good crap.
He could do Still of the Night. That's a Meryl Streep film no one talks about anymore.
Yeah,
wish people would watch Fosse. When Sam Rockwell did Fosse, I wish they would have, FX would have jumped on that and shown all that jazz, because Sam Rockwell was great. But Roy Scheider, he got it to a T. He was Fosse, and he was lucky enough to work with Fosse.
You know
so
why
it just made it even better.
You know why he got it, Chris? Because he was an actual smoker. And that's
really that would do it. Do you remember the days before they were this is how I feel when I was your age, I had to walk 7 miles in the fucking snow with 2 little socks on. I'm oh my God, do you remember movies before condom warnings or calling Pepe Le Pew a sexual aggressive guy, or people could smoke on TV? And
I remember when John Ritter did with Blake Edwards, and they had glow-in-the-dark condoms, and that was a way to stop it.
Blake Edwards! That's a Blake Edwards! Oh, that's my favorite movie. What did they get arrested for? Cockfighting.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, this stuff is very interesting because I don't have I'm not missing those old jokes. You know, it's like
Mhm.
the Mel Brooks thing. Like people always talk about, you can't make Blazing Saddles ever again, and I'm like, that's okay. We already have Blazing Saddles. It's fine. We can't do those jokes anymore, and we should not do those jokes anymore. But it exists, and we can
I think it
have.
depends on who's
I
presenting it.
I
Like I think like the big picture, if I swear to God, if the big picture were all British actors at the time, this movie would have got way more play. It would have gotten so much more play. Because like even now, people are like, John Cleese. I'm like, yeah, John Cleese. But you know, this was a movie that had, I mean, granted, even though some people don't like the movie and some people love it, like me, they had a lot of fucking star power in that film. So, you know, it's the fact that it didn't get a fair distribution is kind of funny. And I wonder if some of the actors were like, hey,
guys, I'm telling you, it's not this complicated, and it's not a conspiracy theory. There was a first-time director. His film didn't test well, and the guy who greenlit it got fired.
Yeah.
And the new guy who came in was like, I don't like this movie, and it's not testing well, and it makes fun of me. It's not hard to see why it didn't.
Yeah.
I love that JT Walsh has like his first office is all like, what do you call it? Like New Mexico modern.
No, but you know what it is? I could be wrong. It could have been on a set because I wasn't on that movie because, again, we were young babies at the time. But they shot a lot of the exterior on Warner Brothers. I've actually pitched in that room. It is now the Bradley Cooper's office on the Warner Brothers.
I think that's the same office they used in The Player too, if I'm not mistaken. That's
at Raleigh. That was because I remember being on that stage for another thing I wrote. But this was Warner Brothers, and that's now Bradley Cooper's company with Sean Levy or whatever. It's like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because you see this like even in some of the characters, you see these weirdo changes. Like the kid who had the Nepo baby still becomes a Nepo baby because he does not do films anymore. He becomes an agent. But when JT Walsh, you know, that first office is like, you know, like I go to Arizona a lot, and so here's all my hoedown cowboy shit. Yeah. And then you go to the end where he's hired again, and it looks like the opening to like The Devil's Advocate. It's all dark and black, and the desk is diamond shape, and the fireplace, and it's just like, okay.
100%. So just quickly we'll finish the movie because I want to keep into the conversation. But here, the beginning of it, I think the movie maybe tried for some depth, right? Which is like when you are tested and you have a first blush of perhaps success. You know, what happens is you've got Kevin Bacon who's been introduced or invited.
See right there, that angle is so horrible.
Yeah, but
the one where he was chopping vegetables.
Terry Hatcher is clearly, you know, like, you know, you've got the studio head trying to set. She's an ingenue trying to hook up.
She's fucking everybody. Like I wouldn't be surprised if she was fucking the studio head too, and the wife is just like, fuck.
Absolutely. So this is all happening, but then you have this thing where even like Michael McKean is the DP / best friend /
I fought for you.
Play. This is the part before he's fought for him where he's like, hey, I'm not inviting, you know, my girlfriend. I'm going to go to this big Hollywood party because, you know, Terry Hatcher asked me. And like literally McKean's like, really, you're already doing this, which basically telegraphs that, you know, Bacon is willing to sell out his girl. He's willing to sell out his best friend, which we'll see him do later. Even as he's willing to sell out whatever vision, as myopic I would say as it was. I was little Mr. Magoo glasses on the creative, but like, you know, he's willing to do all of that. And so this is the part where today, if we were to remake this guy needs to have some redeeming quality other than being portrayed by the great Kevin Bacon, who I like.
Outside
but Tracy, like, honestly, I want to point this out. And I think you're making a very good point here. The white guy who was delightful was enough to greenlight a movie. And Kevin Bacon was this guy at this time. And, you know, God bless. I think this thing is...
One of the things we skipped over,
Uh-huh.
because I think this goes into what you're saying. So the green Martin Short, who steals every scene he's in, and is the funniest thing in this movie, in my opinion. he basically looks at Kevin Bacon as this whacked out, great wig, like wannabe agent guy. And he goes, look, I don't know you and I haven't seen your work, but you're very important. I'm never wrong about these things. Right? This is the beginning of the Hollywood nonsense. And that's his agent. Yeah. And so it is, to Chris's point, right? This is a foundational, if you guys are going to get into this industry, this is the guy who's supposed to fight for you. And at the end of the day,
you're going to get 3 people.
Yeah. Exactly. But at the end of the day, we'll get to the plot, where he has a moment of second fame because he's not done anything.
Right.
So you keep bending over backwards for the talentless white guy. Do that. When that happens, literally Martin Short, who doesn't even remember Kevin Bacon's pitch for the film he thinks he cares so much about, without even remembering that, Martin Short's like, no, but here's the thing. You did this music video. It is still the late 80s, so we might still care. Propaganda was still a thing, right?
Yeah. Michael Bay was
videos, one of my favorite shows. So that was stuff I sat down to every Friday.
So like literally, Martin Short, without remembering this, is a big mistake for you to do your original thing. Here's a pile of scripts that have come for you. And then Bacon is writing on this moment, again, because he's learned nothing from the second act where he was thrown out. He's like, I'm going to do my own movie. I'm going to take this 10 minutes to do what I want to do. And in short, almost like Kevin Bacon says, you're making a big mistake. Okay, fine, we'll do it. But it's like so the point of this movie is that nobody in Hollywood has any character, any passion, any vision, and it all happens by rote. And if we're cynical, we can say that's true. Or we can say the guy who greenlit this did films like Local Hero and The Mission and Fire and Midnight Express. And so he's like, you guys, I'm now running one of your studios as a Brit and it's not working. And his fuck you to Sony, Columbia at the time, right, was this picture. So to Crix's point, it's a little subversive. That's why it was buried. And it frankly just didn't test well. If it tested well, they would have released it because they're all whores, right? Well, let's be honest, it's a combination. And they knew that home video back then could support getting their money back better than putting in a full-on P&A spend on this film in multiplexes because inside baseball.
Right. So going into this, but if you look at a lot of the filmmakers now who aren't even going to film school, this stuff is good. I think this film is perfect for them because going back to James Wan and Lee Wannell, nobody would cast them. Nobody would hire them. And Lee just said to James, fuck it, we'll do Saw ourselves.
Yeah.
They did it themselves. And I think this is why this movie is so important, is because what happened? The guy said, fuck it, I'm going to make music videos. Because at that time, man, music videos were a big deal. Marcus Nispel, like all these big time filmmakers, Hammer and Tongs, Cream and Godley, like all these guys that went on to make movies, they started as video directors. And he showed that, and you look at this video and it's a shoestring budget, but when you look at the way it's styled, you could see that video on MTV any day. And the fact that they used Friday Night Videos, which is Friday Night Videos was for people who didn't have cable. And and it was that, and Rockin' Across America, I think, with Rick Dukeman was like two of the ones that I watched all the time as a kid in Alaska.
There were regional things like V66.
Yeah, but this one was Friday Night Videos for sure.
But this is also the genius of this is a rooftop overlooking the Cinerama Dome, right? You've got this, but but here's the thing. Again, if I cared about this character, but I care about Kevin Bacon, so I guess we can split here. If I cared about this character's progress, trajectory, or plot, this is the part where he's being joyful because he's finally getting back. By the way, we didn't all exist even in '89, but he's finally getting back to, I want to just create, whether I have something to say or not. I just want to create. And that's where you need to start as an artist. You just need to write. You just need to direct. You need to be allowed to fail. You need to be allowed to succeed. As actors, as writers, as directors, you get better at this. And part of the problem with what we have now is that, somebody goes I'm not casting shade because I don't know. I've only seen Euphoria, Kissing Booth, and Saltburn, and Priscilla. And I don't know if Jacob Elordi can act. But right now, the industry is telling me that if you cast him, he'll get money because he's never opened a film. I'm like, cool. But like, here's the thing: there's always the hot young thing. He will be given a couple more chances now to pick wisely, and if he picks wisely, he could have maybe that career. And the system is still trying to figure out how to do that. So this is a movie. Hi, Pliskin. A movie about trying to tap
Hi,
into
Gizmo.
potential. You know, in terms of like, I have something to say and I want to make something. The problem now is that studios are like, Brad Pitt works for Scale and Oscars under budget, or event, tentpole, whatever. The middle class of film doesn't exist. That's where peak TV came in, is now turning into peak movies, i.e. I need Costner on a horse to sell Yellowstone now because I won't do it. And so the tail is eating the snake. So what this film does, although a period piece of a different era, you can see the metaphor for streaming. You can see the metaphor for the lack of theatrical recoup after the pandemic. So it is instructional, to your point, Chris. But I think this is part of, I would do a slate of other films we're probably going to talk about in a minute, like Swimming with Sharks, like The Player, of a time period where we were talking about this. Because it is a good prep. If you want to get into this industry, it can be this bad, but it can also be better.
Well, with Swimming with Sharks, that would be like the one that I would have like a screening for PAs and be like, hey, you guys gonna come watch this movie because this is definitely like, it's Inglourious Bastards for personal assistants.
100%.
And I think that was the first time I came across Kevin Spacey. So I was like, all right, cool. And it was just this weird thing. But what I also like about, like, I would always put the big picture and the player together, and this is why. Because the big picture is all about getting there and getting your foot in the door. And then the player is like, you're there now. What happens next? Because then you're brought into this world of, you know, seeing this fucking agent being a scumbag, but he's an agent. But yeah, it's like the before, after, and then and they both have their moments. Like, so even in the big picture, it's like, who's gonna watch something with somebody over 40? Like, they could just go home and you know, and just those things that we see all the time.
The player doesn't have a dustbuster sex scene fantasy.
Well, that's because it's not a comedy. I mean, this is supposed to be bullshit. I mean, not bullshit, but it's a comedy. I mean, his fantasies are weird. He already dreamt about humping her in lederhosen, and then he's dreaming him and his girlfriend are fighting, and it's like, hey, see what you gonna do with the gun? See, so I think his brain is just the typical, like, I find him to be possibly neurodivergent because there's always just a bunch of shit going on in his head, and I think that's just that's what happens, you know. And
Jeff brings up a good point. I think Kevin Smith understood what to do with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back too. I think he definitely had thoughts.
Are you a fan of
we're in a time where it's different.
Crix, I'm sorry. Tracy.
Yes.
You're a fan of the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
I am not a fan, but I saw it. I go, that tracks for Kevin.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought Clerks was like, again, dick jokes are only so interesting for most of us. But like, yeah. But I appreciate what he did with Clerks. You know, and I'm glad that he gave us Jersey Girl. No, I'm not. Anyway, I'm just
I don't. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, sometimes I like to think that Kevin had the idea from the big picture, because when they went off on the things about the projectors and they're like, no projectors can show black and white anymore. I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. We have like 2 black and white theaters here in LA.
By the way, I love you for bringing that up, because literally last night, as a former projectionist, I was like, dude, it's all about the film and how you spool it. I mean, and then they go into the booth, because I'm this old. When I was a projectionist, we were running the Christie 1000s, and that was what was in this movie. And I absolutely ran black and white films there. I had like Kitty Matinees. I had Steamboat Willie that I was projecting out of the same projector that I did Last Crusade, summer of '89. I was like, that is just bullshit. I would like to believe that Chris Burdess would know that.
No, I think he did that on purpose.
I hope so. Well, it's like that great line I think Walsh has, where, you know, Kevin Bacon's like, yeah, I'm from Ohio. It's like, oh, that's amazing. You know, my girlfriend, my wife, or whatever she is, you know, she's from, you know, Illinois. And you're like, you know, but like it's like that. Like I think that's a joke.
Well, yeah, because some people that have never left the state have no idea what geography is. Like when I say something, I'm like, Idaho's right next to California. It only takes like 19 hours to drive to LA from where I live. And they're like, what? We thought it was over by like New Mexico or some shit. And I'm like, do you ever look at a fucking map? And Ohio and Illinois, I think, are close together, aren't they? Aren't they in the same like region?
Well, yeah.
I haven't seen them either.
West, away, yeah,
but I think so. Just to wrap. So he does a video that seems about as inspired as a student film,
which was sung by Michael McKean and Christopher Guest.
Right, and so then he does something very healthy that more people in Hollywood need to do, and I am currently working on this. He turns off. He didn't have cell phones, but he gets away from his answering service, and he hangs out with the love of his life. And he's like, "Fuck this town." And he gets healthy, and she takes him back because I guess he's Kevin Bacon. Because I think most of us girls would be like, anyway.
Tracy, before that happens, in the narrative, I have a clip of Kevin Bacon with his agent. If you'd like to see it,
anything with Martin Short is my favorite thing about this.
All right, here we go.
Look, Nick, I'm not going to dick you around because I have way too much respect for you. And I'm saying that not as your agent, although, God, that has given me an insane amount of pleasure. It's just some showbiz thing, you know. You hear some talk on the street, and then it becomes that thing.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that your project is dead.
What are you talking about?
Anything that Alan was involved with is dead. Because whoever takes over the studio doesn't want blood on their hands. They want, with all due respect, to distance themselves from the stench. So why don't you just let it blow over, and then in a couple of months you'll come in and we'll have a really nice talk.
A couple of months, Neil. I don't have any money. I'm sorry. Can you just get me a meeting with a new studio head? If I can talk to him, I'm sure I can convince him.
I'm actually glad you did that. Because it brings me to... Because it reminds me of the fact that in the player, and comparing the player to the big picture again, in the player we don't see any of this. In the big picture, I think is more mired in reality because he's having to get a different job every week, and that's the same with everybody. And I mean, like, even people that were on the like Orange is the New Black, Lori Tan Chin was about to apply for food stamps, and then she booked Nora from Queens. One of the guys that worked as a guard, he was having to fly back and forth for shooting, and he said that he lost more money than he made. And so they don't see that, yes, maybe somebody, it's like seeing your teacher working in the summertime. You know, it's weird to see actors that are up and coming. You're like, I just saw you on this, and it's like, yeah, here's your Uber Eats. You know, so I think, so comparing it would be like the big picture is like the dream, and then but some reality involved. The player is kind of all reality. It's like you're gonna have to, this is what you literally have to do to get a movie made.
But you know, have some, I think the reason I think the player, and I think Christopher Guest would probably
that was one of it was what's his face, Vincent the Kingpin D'Onofrio. It was one of his first roles, wasn't it?
Well, he's Full Metal Jacket and things, but like, yeah, but like, I think that Altman, because again, Altman was of a certain generation that started with live TV, did great auteur films. Like, he expands like decades of greatness. But there's something about having a seasoned pro, 40 years plus, in Altman, saying, look, I have enough perspective to go back to what it used to be, to see what it is, so which is why just going to network, right? The great Sid Lumet also started with live television, Playhouse 90, right? So he doesn't hate television, even though one could look at network as a read of an indictment.
Oh, I love that movie.
But he liked it. It was a warning. It was a warning, Chayefsky wrote, where he said, look, man, news is a public service. If you think you can get ratings and you're about money on news, Watchdog and Democracy, Fourth Estate instead. I would argue he's the father of reality TV, and he called it out in 77. But anyway, we move on. But because you had men like Lumet doing network, and you had someone like Altman who came from television and live television, because he came from theater and he could do it, and then multiple decades owning it. When he criticizes Hollywood, it's interesting. I would argue that the level of depth of criticism in the big picture with a first-time director is very different. So they have different vantage points, different points of view, which is why both should be companion pieces. Watch them both together because they come out 3 years apart, as to your point. But you have an in-house expert after decades, and you have a first-time director in Chris Guest saying, "This kind of bullshit." That's interesting if you care about.
But
right?
But still, Christopher. Even though Christopher Guest, it was his first directing movie, it didn't mean that he wasn't already experienced in other shit. I'm sure that when they did Spinal Tap, he shadowed the fuck out of Rob Reiner, because why wouldn't you?
Well, because perfection, but there's a difference between shadowing and doing. And I, as someone who likes every other Christopher Guest movie alive, I think he figured out his jam. And I think what I interpret as weaknesses perhaps in this movie, I think he polished over. And when he relaunches again, it's like a Waiting for Guffman. I would also say his Showtime, original Showtime movie, where he, with a very feminist approach with Daryl Hannah, because she was hot after Splash, did his Attack of the 50-Foot Woman redo. And he got that it was a feminist tale if you do it correctly. You know, I'm afraid of what Tim Burton's going to do. I'm sad that that's being remade by him. But what Guest got right in the HBO movie, I think he learned his stuff. I think this was his film school, the big picture. So if you care about film, if you care about Christopher Guest, if you like Jamie Lee Curtis and you like her husband, yeah. But like, it's worth seeing, but it's of its time and place. But I don't know that it's truly great. I think The Player is. I
think it's great. You will never convince me that the big picture is. I actually like it over The Player. To be dead honest, yes, I do, because with Christopher Guest, when they did the whole thing about, oh, this projector doesn't do that, oh, this projector doesn't do that, you've heard that shit before, and that's why it's funny, and it's because it's all satire. Somebody, some people don't like satire, and that's completely fine. And I'm not you. I'm just saying, people in general. Some people will be like, I don't get satire, but hearing stuff like that. Because I've been told, oh, well, you can't play it on this because it's da-da-da-da. You can't play it on this because it's da-da-da-da. And they just make up. And if you watch the scene again, it's like they're just making up shit in their head as they go, which should tell you that everybody in Hollywood is a fucking fantastic liar.
Well,
especially if they're executives.
When they fire Walsh and then they hire the new, like, you have to realize, like, it was new. Because in the 80s, you had people like Don Steele. You had people like Sherry Lansing. Who
right.
Things. And so this was actually like, we're indicting men and women equally, which is fair.
Yeah, because you look at his thing and it was all like down home, and then you look at hers and hers is like Hollywood vampire. It's like if Christian Louboutin went in and decorated an office, and it seems like,
I believe you.
What agents and studio heads, I don't know what female studio heads were like back in the day, but I feel like they had to be more severe because they had to probably fight harder. I don't care if she's a studio head. I'm sure like everybody's got pretty good nicknames for her behind her back.
Absolutely. You know that her heels have like red on the bottom. Louis Vuitton.
Yeah. But no, people will be like, oh, here comes the dragon lady, blah, blah, blah. And it's like all these things behind her back. But when they're in front of her, they're probably either scared shitless or they just don't give a fuck.
There's a read where Christopher Guest, right, is like, okay, so the dragon lady comes in, different person, same problem. And then you see the ingenue who's like, oh, did you get fired from your movie? I'm no longer going to fuck you, because that's Terry Hart. And then we go into the John Cleese, It's a Wonderful Life, imagination.
Yeah.
Before he figures out, let's just go back to making things, because the truth is he doesn't have a lot of experience and he hasn't said anything yet. So he's trying to do that, which is, again, bad props, right? But then it's like he gets this. I love this. I'm sure doing like a 70s in the late 80s is every
crochet.
And so you have this, but then, again, because, it's the time, he gets his shot. He is now, he has his DP behind him. He has his girl back because I guess she just was desperate. And his parents get flown in. And then he gets to look at his vision because he has a lot to say.
I mean, and it's weird because fuck, I just went away. Never mind. Go ahead.
No, but that's the movie.
I'm going to say this at this point. I think everything that needs to be said about the big picture has already been said. So,
oh wait, no, it hasn't. This is my favorite Michael McKean role outside because I grew up with Lenny and I had the hugest crush on Lenny with Lenny and Squiggy,
Sure.
and I still yell "make out" if the lights go out, and everybody around me gets immediately scared because they think I'm a sexual predator. They don't get it. But I'd never seen outside of Clue. I'd never seen Lenny as something else, and so when I saw Clue, I was like, "Oh my god, that's how he really sounds." That's how he really looks. And then here, it's like, in this one too, I don't know why. I just loved him in this because it was just like, you've got the kid who's like, this is my day, this is my chance. And then you've got the older seasoned vet that's like, are you really sure you want to do it this way?
Yeah.
And of course the young kid is like, you don't know what you're talking about. Go scratch. And then it's almost like the prodigal son thing. That's what I was going to say. It's the prodigal son thing where he takes off, says, fuck all y'all. And then he has to come back hat in hand. And when he says to Emmett, I want you to be my friend again. And then he stops and he goes, I want to be your friend again.
Yeah, it's a good moment. But again, that's the genius of Kevin Bacon. He can sell that moment. He is completely in that moment, and it's a beautiful thing.
She's having a baby, makes me cry every time. You get to that Kate Bush part, no way. Waterworks.
I agree with you guys.
I agree. Oh yeah, everything in Aaron. He's lovely, by the way.
Michael McKean is always good.
I saw his wife once.
There's this show called Better Call Saul.
Annette O'Toole is lovely.
If you've not messed with Better Call Saul, just look at it.
Well, okay,
so like moving on.
I love arguing with Tracy and Tom because you guys are such film buffs. So I just love, it reminds me almost of the Great Debate when Chris Gore had his show on IFC.
Yes.
And they would be like, one person likes Kevin Smith, one person hates Kevin Smith, and fucking Muse is on the panel. So of course the dude that hates Kevin Smith lost.
I will never be one of the guys.
Fanatic with Chris Gore as a contestant. It was.
You were?
I was.
Chris was a friend of mine for like 15 years. He's so
Ultimate Film Fanatic, and I lost on a technicality, which I still resent to this day. But I really won. It was really good. But I got $500, and it was a really easy day.
Yeah, it seems like it, man. It's just.
I had Keith David. Ione Skye, which I was nervous because I used to drive her when I was working on an indie movie that she was starring in. And she was like, "You look familiar." I'm like, "I drove you for 2 months." Thanks. That was good. And I forgot who the third was, but it was like Keith David. And I was like, every time I saw him, because I always think the thing, I go, dun dun, dun dun, dun dun. You get the thing, dun dun. And so when we got to meet him, I go, dun dun. He goes, "Yeah, that's all right." I got Keith David to give me a high five for doing this thing.
Who was the female?
It was Ione Skye.
Ione Skye. So I want to bring up a movie real quick.
Wait,
two may have seen it.
We can't do this. We have to do.
I have to. It's called The Rachel Papers, and it's with Dexter Fletcher and James Spader.
I know the Rachel Papers. I think I saw.
Okay, Todd, you can have your show back.
All right, Be Bad, Be Best.
Oh, are we doing okay? All right, Be Bad, Be Best, which means Cricks, you have to choose between It's So Bad It's Bad, no one should ever see it, or It's So Bad It's Awesome and everybody should. So
like best worst movie.
Yeah, exactly. Tracy, what's yours?
I think it was the aforementioned obvious companion piece, if you will, to the big picture. Swimming with Sharks, written and directed by George Lang, who used to work for Barry Levinson. But most people think this is kind of Scott Rudin. Kevin Spacey's playing. Frank Wally plays the young innocent who thinks he gets a development job that's going to lead him to his dreams. He sleeps with the development girl. He doesn't understand why things are so bad. Kevin Spacey repeats things that Scott Rudin used to say by way of Joel Silver. Repeat after me.
Oh, really?
Pump or loafer? What do you mean, pump or loafer? Because after I fire you, you're going to be working at a shoe store. Pump or loafer? That level of shit was like going on in this movie. So this was actually a film, and George has given interviews about this. They actually did, when agent trainees would come in, I don't know if they still do, but up until like the early aughts, they would screen this movie for people at all the agencies and people who were, it was like, this is what working in Hollywood is. It's way more venomous, it's way more evil. The fact that Kevin Spacey plays the douche makes it evergreen. And it's of the same era as The Big Picture. Be Bad, Be Best. Pricks. Yes, first.
Was that your bad or your best?
I'm putting it out there.
She's asking you if it's Be Bad.
Okay, well, for swimming with sharks for me, I think it's still, like I said, I would show this to people who are like, I want to be a personal assistant for so and so. I'm like, you better fucking watch this movie first, dude, because you do not have any idea what you're getting into. Like I was like, you know, Mariah Carey has a thing in a writer where nobody can look her in the fucking eye, including her own employees. So I like it for that. But what I didn't, so I'm going to say it's best, but this is why it's kind of bad for me too, because looking at that poster, I was expecting a ton of laughs, like the one with Jennifer Connelly and the Mulroney brothers when she's riding the horse. Like I expected it to be so I expected it to be funny like that. And then I go in and he's like, tie him up. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It was like with Midsommar. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But then I went back and watched it a second time. And now Midsommar is like my top 10 film. And Swimming with Sharks is the same way too, because anything that has to do with stuff that goes on in Hollywood, because let's face it, New York is fucking boring when it comes to like theatrical stories. Nobody thinks of New York for those kind of stories unless it's about Broadway. So with LA, you get, and you know, and I know Silver Cup Studios and all that shit is there, but when you get LA, that's like what you see every fucking day. It's like any person, you can always tell someone who is from California if the first thing out of their mouth in the first like 3 minutes is traffic.
True.
And so that's why I like, and in that way, that's why I like this movie. And for people who aren't from here, I think that they would enjoy it too. Now that Entourage has happened and we got to see Piven's version of Ari, what was his last name?
Ari Emanuel, basically, but you know.
Ari Emanuel, and then Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder as a version of the other guy that had a big ass mouth back then.
Sure, yeah.
So I think that this is, I'll call it best forever and a day, because even though Kevin Spacey's in it, it kind of feels good now, because you just go yeah, like every time he like stuffs him or pokes him or whatever, I'm just like, yeah, get him.
100%. I agree. For me, it is a B best, because I also saw this coming. I was in film school, and this came out. And oh my god! And I'd already interned at like Philstein Gray and Davis Entertainment, so I had a sense of it. And that track was stuff that I'd seen. I remember interning for Brad Gray. He was terrifying, even though he was a wee man. And I was like, oh my god, this movie! And it was a cautionary tale. It still holds up. I think it's really quite good, actually.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I would say, and again, I've been very honest about how much I don't really love The Big Picture. Why I think Swimming with Sharks is ultimately a better movie than The Big Picture is that while it's super insider baseball, you can watch Swimming with Sharks as the Boss from Hell movie, which is a great subgenre, whether it's Working Girl or not. Boss from Hell movie. You don't have to care about LA. It's just the world it's in. It's about humanity to man, is it with. So I think it works because it's a Boss from Hell film, regardless of inside baseball. I don't think The Big Picture has that. I think it's inside baseball. And I
think that, and when you're talking about, like, for me, you know, I wasn't raised here. I wasn't born here, but I've lived here long enough. And I feel sometimes when people are like, give me a list of movies from LA. I'm like, okay. And so I think about it for a second, and I'm like, to live and die in LA. Also because William Peterson Bishop Kelly is a school in Idaho. So he's an Idaho boy. So To Live and Die in LA, The Big Picture, The Player,
Yep.
LA Story,
Yep.
and Boys in the Hood. I mean, and right now I know these are multiple, like, and I would even go further with another list, but Boys in the Hood to me, and I know it's like mostly white people in here, Boys in the Hood was so, I mean, eye-opening. And, you know, for someone like me, it was like, I don't know what LA is like, you know, right now I'm in, you know, I'm either in Alaska or Hawaii or wherever else. So I didn't know about, you know, what went on in Compton and all that stuff. And, you know, hearing like, and then what happened to some of the people that were in the movie, what happened to their lives after, it's very sad. But it's also very representative of what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, I mean, it's not over by any long shot, but I mean, it was like back then, it was like, you didn't fuck around. You didn't make a joke. You didn't do finger signs. You didn't wear red or blue. Like it was nothing.
That's the thing though. I mean, because there were like Boys in the Hood is a great film today, 100 years from now. Great. But that was also told from, again, a Black writer, director point of view, starring
And he grew up there, yeah.
But the other film that came out that made more, of course, more money, but is not as critically heralded for probably obvious reasons, was Colors, where you have Sean Penn and two white guy cops telling it through their story of what's going on. So if you really want to do a compare and contrast, watch Singleton's Boys on the Hood, then watch Dennis Hopper directing Colors, and see how those things line up for you.
What was weird about Colors too was like that was the first time we heard about shootouts at movie theaters.
Yeah.
Before that, I don't even think Boys in the Hood was that severe. But I remember seeing the news reports.
They came to Westwood. That was where that happened.
Oh shit!
I remember that.
Not to move us on, but
do it.
I have to go eat dinner at some point. All right. So here's my be bad or be best.
Oh.
This is a entertainment industry story.
Yep.
It's Blake Edwards, so it's very white, undeniably. Is it a be bad or be best for you, Chris?
I would go with be best, and it's because this I think was one of the last films that William Holden had done. And I had a big crush on that guy when he did the movie with Ricky Schroeder.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but you know, and this is not The Champ. That was John Voight. William Holden, the one where
oh God, the year was it the Yearling?
You know what I'm talking about, right? The one where Ricky Schroeder is orphaned because the RV goes off the cliff, and no, that's a deer.
Something that.
But because of the cast, a lot. I mean, especially like his wife, Julie Andrews. Like you can never go wrong with Julie Andrews because no matter what she does, she's amazing. She can, you know, whether she's from The Sound of Music or The Princess Diaries or something completely off the board, like being the Shane Wizard's mother in Big Mouth. So it's like, so it's things that come to that. And then like the whole cast too, I'm just looking over the cast. This movie is destined to be nothing but funny. You've got these guys like Robert Preston, Richard Mulligan, Stuart Margolin, guys that were really good at physical comedy. Richard Mulligan especially, like his rubber face, like Empty Nest. I still love Empty Nest. And Soap, you know, so when you get those old school guys that, you know, and yes, of course, it's predominantly male, but the women that they do have, like Shelley Winters and Loretta Swit and Rosanna Arquette, like very, very young. Blake, you know, Blake Edwards, he doesn't sugarcoat it, but he makes it fun. It's like why I always point to Skin Deep, because that was the first time I saw John Ritter as a human being and not Jack Tripper. So when he was running around, and I was very young. So when he was running around with his little lamp and he's like, I'm a genie and my only wish is to fuck you. And I'm like, what did he say? And so anytime when Blake Edwards would come out with another movie, I'm just like, I have to watch it because now I'm going to see somebody who I grew up with in a sitcom or whatnot doing this, you know? like the cockfighting thing with the and Zap from American Gladiators, and and SOB is the same way. You're just like especially if you grew up in that era. It's fun to see these people who might not be around anymore, and and you can savor that, like the Treat Williams on Feud. They finally did the RIP, and I just cried.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's nice to be introduced to certain actors by certain directors. Like, I wouldn't have known who Treat Williams was if it wasn't for Spielberg in 1941.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, exactly. And like Slim Pickens, that was my first introduction to Slim Pickens. So when you like, yes, you say Spielberg, oh, I'm going to watch it, or oh, I won't watch it. But when it came to Blake Edwards, I'm like, yes, I don't care what it is. He could be picking his nose and eating his boogers while reading a newspaper. I will watch it. So yes, it's a best for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm going to say be best as well. I had parents that didn't really care about ratings, and so I'd already seen the Pink Panther movies like that were earlier, and so Dad was like, "Oh, a new Blake Edwards movie," and of course I knew her as Mary Poppins. And what was traumatizing when this film came out in 1980, if you were younger, like, why is Mary Poppins doing a topless scene? So like all of a sudden, so there was something.
That's right, the boobies.
You basically have like Julie Andrews being topless, and you're like, that is uncomfortable for Mary Poppins. But that Oscars that year, the great Johnny Carson, back when we had a host who knew how to write and actually host game show or word shows that were fun. I remember there was an uncomfortable line where Johnny Carson looked at Julie Andrews, who's there. Your SOB had been out. He's like, I want to thank Julie Andrews for reminding us in SOB that the hills are still alive. And you're like, that was like national television. You're like, dad joke, inappropriate. I liked it because I thought it was inside Hollywood as well as a kid. And I thought that I got most of the jokes that my parents were always saying inappropriate stuff. But there is something particularly weird for me that Blake Edwards got his wife Mary Poppins to do a topless scene the way John Derek wanted all of his real wives, whether it's Ursula Andress
Bo.
or to be Bo Derek, to do nude scenes. I'm like, why are you? There's something weird about those guys for me. But I think it's a clever movie. It's a funny movie. The cast it is William Holden's last screen appearance. I also had a crush with him. I saw Sunset Boulevard for the first time at the age of 12 when he comes out of the pool. I'm like, okay.
Plus, he was dating Stephanie Zimbalist from Remington Steele.
Stephanie Powers.
Stephanie Powers.
Yes.
Oh, who's Zimbalist? There's a Zimbalist. But yeah, he was dating the chick from Remington Steele. That was his last lover.
Heart to Heart. Stephanie Powers. Different. He was with Stephanie Powers.
Oh, fuck. Okay. Yes, I remember he was with one of those bitches.
Yeah. But we love him. We love him so hard. So, Todd, for you?
I mean, I'm good with it as a movie.
Plus, it's the guys who did Pink Panther, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But also Blake Edwards, if you want to see a weird side to Blake Edwards, Experiment in Terror with the great Ross Martin. And it's incredible. I'd say it's a fun thriller. It has a great Henry Mancini score. So. Experiment in Terror. Yes, with Lee Remick as the woman in peril.
Nice. Wow.
It's a good one.
Wow.
All right. I got to go get dinner soon.
All right. My boost.
Yeah. Boost your shit.
So to me, because working off of the film that Chris brought us tonight with the big picture, I think the be-all, end-all, the film still to be, nothing will ever be as good. It violates the rules. Dead man narration, voiceover that works, inappropriate ages. It is the one. It is the only. If you have not seen the great 1950 masterpiece by Billy Wilder, it is Sunset Boulevard, you are missing out. A Hollywood story, a most unusual picture, is how this film originated and was sold. In the opening shot of Sunset Boulevard, not in the script. In the script, there's a clever opening where we're in a morgue. And you have dead bodies talking to each other in all the drawers. Hey, Joe. Hi, Joe. Right? No. The original movie opens in the gutter, Sunset Boulevard. It starts in the gutter, and that's where it begins, and it goes to darker places that have never been reached. It's noir, it's gorgeous, it's black and white with Kevin Bacon's character, wishes he knew how to say or tell a story in the big picture in 1989 or whatever. But Wilder's characters do it, and I think it gets it right. It's the young, hot guy who's being bought by the older gal. I'm richer than all this new Hollywood trash, says the Silent Queen, Norma Desmond. It is exquisite. It is perfect. It is quotable. It's a masterpiece, and I don't think we've ever done anything better in this genre. And I just wanted to boost that because I think we need to go back and remember the greats, and so that's what I'm doing tonight.
I just remember when they made the musical version that Faye Dunaway was like super pissed that she didn't get the role over Glenn Close. And
I saw Glenn Close do it, and Glenn Close with one look. I was like, oh
yeah,
my God.
Faye Dunaway could not sing to save her life, and I think there's still audio out there of her. It's like Chris Klein auditioned for Mamma Mia that is just so awkward, and it was on a boat or something. The audition, it was cringeworthy.
Yeah, well, what's funny about that though, that movie, like I love, because Sunset Boulevard should not have worked on stage, and it did. Like, it's one of those musicals that I was like, wow, this is a pleasant surprise. But I was lucky because I got to see it first with Glenn Close, who slayed, and then Patti LuPone, who also obviously slayed. Different performances. But it is this amazing role. And in 1950, you had two of the greatest inside baseball entertainment stories, and I think it split it. So you had Gloria Swanson playing the great Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard. You had Betty Davis in 1950 doing All About Eve. They both lose to Judy Holliday and Born Yesterday.
All About Eve is a good movie too to show, like, especially like theater kids. Like, you need to see this one.
Yeah, but I would argue that All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard are perfect screenplays. Screenplays is literature. Read the
maybe even Gaslit too. Gaslight.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, that's good. Both versions.
What are you boosting, Todd?
Oh, I'm going to boost this because it's an entertainment movie. I feel like Takedown.
Oh. Great Richard Rush.
Okay, and then Steve Railsback, who's famous for playing Manson.
Right.
Helter Skelter on TV in the 70s. If you were a kid,
this movie is so good and entertaining at all times. And also it's doing what we're talking about. It takes down the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry can't fight back because it's kind of perfect.
Yeah. I think this is a brilliant film, and I also think it was a late in life career highlight for Peter O'Toole, who rightly got
Oh my God. I mean, there's this and
my favorite year.
My favorite year.
Phantoms are the last two great Peter O'Toole.
My favorite year is almost forgotten now, and it's so good. I am not an actor, I'm a movie star.
I love the original Bedazzled.
Oh, right on. Dudley
when he played the devil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't touch me.
Yeah.
You bowl me.
So good.
I don't love you.
It's a great song. I think this is a great one to boost because you're right. I don't think a lot of people quote it anymore. It's great.
Well, the movie itself, like if you watch it, is wildly entertaining.
It is.
The main characters are awful.
Mm-hmm.
They're genuinely terrible people everywhere. And I think that, like, right now we're dealing with a best picture universe, which
doesn't make the numbers. Doesn't get the numbers.
Well, I mean, like, I've seen Oppenheimer. I've seen.
I haven't yet.
By the way, can we just take a minute to enjoy that Oppenheimer's up for best editing? I think that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, what the fuck?
I was like, was there an editor? Because I just felt like
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because it's too long.
I just reminds me of the fact that the only reason Matt Damon won an Oscar was when they threw his fucking movie The Martian into the comedy category. That's the only way they won, was to do that. And somebody else did it again this year. Isn't there
It's
Golden
the
No, but there's a film now that's in for Best
Yeah,
Picture that was kind of another one of those
it's got
situations.
a comedy. What is it? It's the Zone of Interest. That's what you're
Yeah.
talking
I
about.
was like, what the fuck? That's not a comedy.
No, it's not. And it's also not
Interest
a Holocaust movie.
It
It's
was up for
nothing.
Fringe.
It's like deeply, utterly nothing.
Oh,
But
I don't agree
just
with that.
oh, I just watched it, and I don't know what the
I loved
point of
it.
it was.
I
You
think-
loved it? Why?
I think it's the perfect example of the banality of evil. I think I've never seen a Holocaust film from that frame before.
Oh, okay, I
You're
guess.
looking across the street from Auschwitz, where the monsters that do it.
Who is that for? Who is the banality of evil for?
Aside from the red states to the Republicans and the rest of the world,
Okay, yeah, no,
I
that
think
sounds great.
it's a good
Do
time
you
to
think
remind
they'll
people of the
see it?
Holocaust
Do you
right
think
now.
they'll see it at any point? Those people you're talking about.
No, because it did get distribution because it's not as pathetic as Poor Things.
They'll get a Cliff Notes version. They'll just have their assistant go, give me the Cliff Notes
I-
version of this movie.
Yeah, Tracy, I want to get into the problematic thing that is Poor Things.
I want
with you.
people who like Poor Things to stop it and just watch Frankenhooker. It's better. It is
I
better.
totally agree.
Better.
But I want to get into you with the debate
Oh my
about
god!
why.
You're gonna have to ply me with much alcohol.
Oh my
Did you go see
God.
Lisa Frankenstein yet?
Not yet, but I
No,
will.
and I won't. I will never see
I'm
that.
going to.
Why? Because it's Diablo Cody?
For the same reason that I didn't like all the movies we just talked about that are up for Best Picture, I'm not going to that.
Oh, this
I'm
is
not
Okay.
This is.
Well, this is not a boost. This is a more like run the fucking opposite direction. I was so angry that I watched this movie. Like I wanted to
Was it
kick
bad?
Eli Roth in the ass. Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Oh, I like Thanksgiving.
Really,
Oh.
I hated it. It was like, and
Why?
the Boston accents were like,
Why?
it was like the accent.
literally-
Blood rage.
Thanksgiving is the only movie I can think of that's coming out in the last couple years that delivered on its marketing promise. No other movie I can think of.
Oh,
Well,
I
yeah,
can-
because of the Grindhouse little thing, and he made it off of that. I appreciate that. I get it. They did the cheerleader thing, but it wasn't as campy as it wasn't Grindhouse to me. It didn't have any kind of camp to it, and maybe it
Oh,
wasn't
it's
supposed to
just
be
a-
like.
I get
Yeah.
that. That's not.
Plus, the way it
not
ended
unfair.
was just like,
That's not unfair. That's not
you know,
unfair.
when it.
I went into it wanting a garbage movie and I got it.
Well,
Tracy, you were gonna say something.
No, I was just gonna say the movie that delivered for me, which was completely snubbed by the Oscars, was
The Menu?
No, last year. I liked The Menu. All Us Strangers this year. If you can watch
Oh,
the
yeah.
trailer, cut to the Pet Shop Boys song, "Always on My Mind and Not Cry," you don't have a heart. And then if you can sit through that movie, I saw it. I paid to see it twice in the theater, and I was devastated both times. I think it gets grief right in a way that most people do not. Certainly, films rarely land. If you've lost your parents, like God help you watching that movie, it's so accurate. And what Andrew Hyde did with this film is a masterpiece. Andrew Scott absolutely should have been up for Best Actor in a world where, I'm sorry, let's just be honest, Bradley, forget his last name,
Bradley
Is-
Cooper?
off as
Whoa.
Mike. It should have been Andrew Scott. Like, I'm sorry. All I saw was
I was pissed. Like, I have not even seen Maestro because the fact that he has such a fucking ego that he didn't want to hire a Jewish actor, but rather put a fucking prosthetic on and play him. Pissed me off to no end. That's Jew face for me. Like, he was totally doing Jew face.
I think the film has more problems than that. I'm a believer that it's okay that Helen Mirren played Golda Meir too, because she's great. But I feel like the film wasn't, and she was. I can't do that because then I only cast.
Well, she didn't direct it though. Bradley, like the feeling is like, just be the fucking director or be the fucking actor. And the fact that you're like, I don't allow anyone to sit down on set. Fuck you, brother. I'll bring my own goddamn thing wrapped around my waist.
But the problem was, again, this is Spielberg developed it. Spielberg was supposed to direct. He got busy. He gave it to Bradley, so he was protected by all the people. And frankly, Warner Brothers is like, Bradley, you better star now. We're not going to make it. So
Did
the
you
reality,
guys see the post that Spielberg put out about the zone of interest?
no,
No.
I'm still
He
like,
said, and I quote, "It's the best movie about the Holocaust I've seen since my own movie, Schindler's List." I'm not fucking with
No,
you. That's what he said.
this
That's
is
awesome.
dude. It's whatever with that guy. Can't. I'm gonna get myself in trouble with that guy. I love his shark film. Anyway, so Chris, thank you for coming back and playing in the
Thank
sandbox.
you. That was so
I
good.
loved it because I usually love all the movies. This one I was like, wow, I'm just experiencing it differently because I've now lived too many years of non-TV.
And it's really funny because I get into debates with this with when I was a critic, but now with my friends who are also former critics, and they're like, how can you say you didn't like that movie? I'm like, listen, I don't have to like a fucking movie just because you said it was good.
Correct.
And half the time when everybody's like, this movie's so awesome, and then I watch it and I'm like, what the fuck? And Midsummer was one of those. I was like, I don't understand what the fuck is going on here. And I was expecting, I don't know what, it was like Spring Breakers, another A24 movie. Like, I hate Spring Breakers. I hate Spring Breakers because the only problem with I said that movie got fucked because when I saw trailers, it was marketed as a rompy Porky's, but a girl version. And so when I get inside Spring Breakers, I'm like, I was like, James Franco looks like fucking riffraff. And I'm like, this is not a comedy. What the fuck is going on? And that's kind of par for the course with any A24 movie. But when someone just goes over and over and says, this movie's great, I'm like, this movie fucking sucked.
Yeah, my problem with Midsummer, and I get everyone's like, no, Tracy, Ari's a genius. I'm like, okay, maybe he is.
Midsommar.
I just can't.
Midsommar.
My problem with that, and I love Florence Pugh. I think she's amazing. But because I have so much reverence for The Wicker Man, I felt like an entire 3 generations have never seen The Wicker Man are giving him credit for basically plagiarizing the best part of The Wicker Man, which just watch The Wicker Man. And so
Yeah, and the thing of
something I want to boost. Wait for it. Thank you for the tie-in. This is an amazing book. Howard David Ham. We Don't Go Back, and it's a look at folk horror. Shout out to Wayne Snyder, who turned me on to this book. It has amazing essay scripts that you will love, and it's not overly scholarly at all. It's actually for film buffs, and it does great. It's like, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Like, it has those kinds of movies reinterpreted, but like for buffs like us, it's not like this dry academic thing. It's really good. And I'm
tell you what, like if you
The Wicker Man.
I got lost
over Midsummer. Wicker Man.
Yeah, Wicker Man. I mean I like both of them. The one with Nick Cage was pretty good too, but I love that I always say that Ari Aster is Wes Anderson's fevered nightmares. Because they're so stylistic that like Ari Aster is like if it was like the Dark Half, Stephen King. It's like you got the really fucking dark dude, and then you've got Light Mary. Like Grant, like I've said before, that the Hotel Grand Budapest will be the closest to horror that Wes Anderson will ever come. Yeah, and but yeah, every time I see an Ari Aster movie, like I was just watching Hereditary, which I don't like, but I was just like, this is Wes Anderson. If Wes Anderson made horror movies, they would be Ari Aster.
Wrong. I think that's not wrong. I think one likes yellow.
I keep not ending this. We're still live on the internet.
We should do this thing.
So I'm gonna just kill it now.
Your blood sugar's low, I can tell, because you're like totally slurring. You